Former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows reportedly offering damning testimony against the former president to Special Counsel Jack Smith in exchange for immunity. That's according to ABC News. Our chief legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed is gathering details for us. Paula, what can you tell us?
Well, CNN previously reported that Mark Meadows had testified before a federal grand jury investigating former President Trump. Now we're learning more about what he has reportedly told investigators. Now, according to reports, he's spoken with investigators 3 times over the past year, and he's told them that in the weeks following the 2020 election, he says that he told Trump that these allegations of significant voter fraud were baseless. Now, that is such a significant break from the rhetoric of former President Trump. It's also a significant break from what Meadows has said publicly, including in a book that he wrote, because he said he wanted to, quote, set the record straight.
So I need to tell you about testimony that just dropped that is absolutely tearing Trump's world apart right now. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this could be the most damaging thing we've seen yet, because Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, the guy who was with him every single day during the final months of his first term, has gone on record under oath and described things that make everything Trump has ever said about January 6th and the 2020 election look like a complete and total lie. We're talking about sworn testimony. We're talking about statements that carry criminal penalties if they're false. We're talking about someone who was literally in the room describing what Trump ordered, what Trump knew, and what Trump refused to do while the Capitol was under attack. This is not hearsay. This is not speculation. This is the chief of staff telling prosecutors exactly what happened behind closed doors. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
That he has never seen any evidence of fraud that would keep now President Joe Biden from the White House, and that he agrees this was the most secure election in U.S. history.
Paula, this sounds like really much more bad news for Trump in his own legal battles that are ongoing right now. Tell our viewers what this means for the former president.
This is one of the most significant developments in this entire investigation.
Come on. Are you seeing what's happening here? This is the ultimate insider. This is the guy who had more access to Trump than almost anyone else in the entire administration. And he's not just cooperating with investigators, he's destroying Trump's entire defense. Every claim Trump has made about not knowing what was happening on January 6th, every denial about ordering people to overturn the election, every story about the classified documents being handled properly. Meadows is contradicting all of it under oath with firsthand knowledge. And the legal firestorm this is creating is unlike anything we've seen in modern American political history. Let me walk you through what Meadows actually testified to, because the specifics are genuinely stunning. According to reports about his testimony, Meadows was in the room when Trump actively ordered efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. Not suggested, not hinted at, ordered, direct instructions from the President of the United States to overturn an election he lost. This is what Trump has been denying for 5 years. He's been saying he just wanted to investigate fraud. He's been saying he was just asking questions. He's been saying he never directed anyone to do anything improper. And now his own chief of staff is testifying under oath that Trump gave direct orders to overturn the results. That's not asking questions. That's not investigating fraud. That's attempting to subvert democracy. And Meadows says he saw it happen. But it gets worse. Much worse. Because Meadows also testified about what happened on January 6th itself while the Capitol was under attack. According to his sworn statements, Trump sat in front of the television and watched the violence unfold. He saw his supporters breaking through barricades. He saw them smashing windows and fighting with police. He saw them storming through the halls of Congress looking for lawmakers to confront. And he refused to act, refused to call in the National Guard, refused to tell his supporters to go home, refused to do anything that might stop the attack. He just watched for hours while the seat of American democracy was being ransacked by a mob he had sent there. That's not a failure of leadership. That's complicity. That's a president who saw exactly what was happening and chose to let it continue. The classified documents testimony adds another layer of catastrophe to all of this. Meadows didn't just talk about January 6th and the election. He also provided critical evidence about how Trump handled classified materials after leaving office And according to his testimony, the mishandling was routine and flagrant. Trump showed classified documents to people who had no authorization to see them at his residence casually, like these weren't some of the most sensitive secrets the United States government possesses, like the rules about who could see what simply didn't apply to him. This corroborates what Jack Smith has been saying about the documents case. It corroborates the evidence that Trump knowingly and willfully violated laws about classified information, and it comes from someone who was there, who saw it happen, who can testify about it under oath. The immunity deal that got Meadows to this point is significant. He was granted immunity by special counsel Jack Smith's team, meaning he can testify without fear that his own statements will be used to prosecute him. That's a major concession from prosecutors. They don't give immunity lightly. They only do it when they believe the witness has information so valuable that it's worth protecting them from prosecution to get it. The fact that Smith was willing to give Meadows immunity tells you everything you need to know about how important his testimony is. Prosecutors believed what Meadows could tell them was more valuable than any case they might bring against Meadows himself, and now we're seeing why. The testimony is devastating, the details are explosive, and the legal consequences for Trump are potentially catastrophic. The timing of all this couldn't be worse for Trump. He's already dealing with approval ratings in the toilet. He's already dealing with the Epstein file disaster. He's already dealing with Republican senators walking out of chambers in protest. He's already dealing with courts ruling against him in case after case. His entire second term has been defined by crises and scandals and legal problems. And now, right in the middle of all of that, his former chief of staff is providing sworn testimony that undermines every defense Trump has ever offered. That exposes his conduct on January 6th. That confirms the mishandling of classified documents. That paints a picture of a president who tried to steal an election and then watched approvingly as his supporters attacked the Capitol. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what Meadows testified to, what it means for Trump's legal exposure, why this testimony is so different from anything we've seen before, and what the consequences could be as multiple investigations use Meadows' words to build their cases. Because this isn't just another news cycle. This is potentially the evidence that finally holds Trump accountable for everything he did. And everyone needs to understand what's at stake. Okay, so let's dig into the substance of what Mark Meadows actually said, because the headlines don't capture the full weight of this testimony. We're dealing with sworn statements from the person who was closest to Trump during the most consequential and controversial moments of his presidency. Meadows wasn't watching from the outside. He wasn't relying on secondhand information. He was in the room. He was on the calls. He was present for the meetings where decisions were made and orders were given. And now all of that firsthand knowledge is part of the official record available to prosecutors and investigators building cases against the former and current president of the United States. The legal firestorm this is creating is justified by the severity of what Meadows described. Let me start with the election overturn testimony, because this goes to the heart of the most serious allegations against Trump. According to Meadows' sworn statements, he was present when Trump actively ordered efforts to overturn the 2020 election results, not passively accepted suggestions from others, not asked subordinates to look into options, ordered, directed, commanded. The President of the United States, knowing he had lost the election, gave explicit instructions to his team to find ways to stay in power anyway. This is what democracy advocates have been warning about for years. This is what the January 6th committee documented through witness after witness, and now the chief of staff himself has confirmed it under oath. Think about what this means legally. Trump's defense on the election interference charges has always rested on the claim that he genuinely believed the election was stolen, that he was acting in good faith to protect democracy, not subvert it, that his efforts to challenge the results were legitimate exercises of his rights as a candidate. But if Meadows is testifying that Trump ordered efforts to overturn results he knew were accurate, if Trump was directing people to change outcomes he understood were legitimate, then the good faith defense collapses. You can't claim you were protecting democracy when you knew you lost and ordered people to ignore that reality anyway. Meadows' testimony establishes the knowing and willful element that prosecutors need to prove criminal intent. The January 6th testimony is equally devastating because it addresses the most damning question of that day. What was Trump doing while the Capitol was under attack? We've heard bits and pieces of this before. We've had witnesses describe Trump's reluctance to call off the mob. We've had testimony about staff pleading with him to do something. But Meadows was right there. He was in the room with Trump as the violence unfolded on television. And according to his testimony, Trump watched it all happen and refused to act. He saw his supporters breaching the building. He saw the violence against police officers. He saw the certification of the electoral votes being interrupted, and he chose to do nothing. The refusal to act is crucial for establishing what Trump wanted to happen that day. if he had immediately called for calm, if he had told his supporters to go home, if he had deployed every resource available to stop the attack, you could argue he never intended for things to get violent. But when you sit and watch for hours without intervening, when you resist calls from your own staff to make a statement, when you let the chaos continue while the certification is stopped, that tells you something about your state of mind. It tells you that maybe the violence was serving your purposes, that maybe you wanted the certification disrupted, that maybe the attack was doing exactly what you hoped it would do. Meadows' testimony about Trump watching the attack unfold directly contradicts years of claims from Trump and his allies. They've said he didn't know how bad it was getting. They've said he was being advised that the situation was under control. They've said he acted as quickly as he could once he understood the severity. But Meadows, who was there, says none of that is true. Trump saw what was happening. He understood the severity, and he chose to let it continue. That's not a failure of communication or a gap in information. That's a deliberate decision, a choice, and it's exactly the kind of choice that establishes criminal liability for the events of that day. The classified documents testimony adds another dimension to the legal catastrophe Trump is facing. According to Meadows, Trump routinely mishandled classified materials after leaving office. He showed them to people who had no authorization to see them. He treated them casually, as if the strict rules about classified information didn't apply to him. This directly corroborates what Jack Smith has been alleging in the documents case. It confirms that Trump knew he had classified materials. It confirms that he understood the restrictions on who could see them. And it confirms that he violated those restrictions anyway, repeatedly, without apparent concern for the national security implications. The detail about showing classified documents to unauthorized individuals at his residence is particularly significant. This isn't about accidentally taking some papers home. This isn't about a filing error or a misunderstanding about what was classified and what wasn't. This is about deliberately sharing the nation's secrets with people who had no right to see them. Who knows who these people were? Who knows what they did with the information? Who knows whether it ended up in hostile hands? Trump's casual disregard for classification rules created exactly the kind of national security risk that the classification system is designed to prevent. And Meadows saw it happening, can testify about it, is testifying about it. The immunity deal Meadows received deserves careful examination because it tells you how prosecutors view his importance. Federal prosecutors don't give immunity to witnesses easily. There's a cost to it. You're potentially letting someone who committed crimes walk free in exchange for their testimony. You only pay that cost when you believe the testimony is more valuable than the prosecution you're giving up. And in Meadows' case, Jack Smith's team clearly concluded that his testimony was worth the price. They believed what Meadows could tell them about Trump was so important, so central to the cases they were building, that they were willing to protect him from prosecution to get it. That calculation makes sense when you consider Meadows' unique position. There were very few people who had his level of access to Trump during the relevant time periods. Very few people who were in the room for the critical meetings and phone calls. Very few people who could provide first-hand testimony about what Trump ordered, what Trump knew, and what Trump refused to do. Meadows was one of those few people. And once he agreed to cooperate, once he agreed to tell prosecutors everything, he became the most valuable witness in any of the Trump investigations. His testimony isn't just one data point among many. It's the testimony of the person who was closest to the action. The legal firestorm metaphor is appropriate because Meadows' testimony touches every major investigation involving Trump. The January 6th case, Meadows can testify about Trump's orders to overturn the election and his refusal to stop the violence. The classified documents case, Meadows can testify about mishandling and unauthorized disclosures. The various state investigations into election interference, Meadows can testify about the pressure campaigns and the direct orders from Trump. Every prosecutor building a case against Trump now has access to the chief of staff's sworn statements. They can use Meadows' words in charging documents and trial presentations. They can call him as a witness to corroborate other evidence. The testimony is like a key that unlocks multiple doors simultaneously. The political implications are equally significant. Trump has spent years building a narrative about loyal soldiers who would never turn on him. He's cultivated an image of unwavering support from his inner circle. He's dismissed every cooperating witness as a liar or a traitor trying to save their own skin. But Meadows is different. Meadows was the chief of staff. Meadows was with Trump every day. Meadows defended Trump publicly for years. When someone like that flips, when they go from loyal soldier to cooperating witness, it changes the narrative. It makes other potential witnesses wonder if they should cooperate too. It makes Trump's remaining allies nervous about what else might come out. It creates cracks in the wall of silence that Trump has tried to maintain around his inner circle. The public is absorbing all of this in real time. Every new revelation from Meadows' testimony gets reported and analyzed and debated. Voters are hearing about Trump watching the Capitol attack without acting. They're hearing about orders to overturn the election. They're hearing about casual sharing of classified documents. And while Trump's base might dismiss all of it as fake news or political persecution, swing voters hear it differently. Independents hear it differently. People who aren't locked into partisan narratives are forming impressions based on what they're learning. And what they're learning from Trump's own former chief of staff is damning. All right, so let's break this down into the key takeaways, because Meadows' testimony represents a turning point in the various investigations into Trump. This isn't just another witness saying damaging things. This is the chief of staff, the ultimate insider, providing sworn testimony that confirms the worst allegations against the president. Let me walk you through the main points and what they mean for Trump's legal exposure and political future. First key point. Meadows' testimony establishes that Trump gave direct orders to overturn the election. This is the smoking gun that prosecutors have been looking for. Not suggestions, not hints, direct orders from the president to his subordinates to find ways to stay in power despite losing. This eliminates any defense based on Trump just asking questions or exploring options in good faith. When you order people to overturn an election, you know you lost. That's not asking questions. That's attempting to subvert democracy. And Meadows says he was in the room when it happened. That's firsthand testimony about criminal intent from someone who can't be dismissed as a peripheral figure or a political enemy. Second key point, the January 6th testimony shows Trump chose to let the violence continue. According to Meadows, Trump watched the attack unfold on television and refused to act. He saw the violence. He understood what was happening, and he chose to do nothing for hours while the Capitol was ransacked. This goes directly to Trump's state of mind on that day. It suggests the violence was serving his purposes. It suggests he wanted the certification disrupted. It suggests complicity in what happened, not just failure of leadership. For prosecutors trying to establish that Trump bears responsibility for January 6th, this testimony is exactly what they need. Third key point, the classified documents testimony corroborates Jack Smith's case. Smith has been alleging that Trump willfully retained classified materials and showed them to unauthorized individuals. Meadows is confirming that this happened. He's providing firsthand testimony that Trump mishandled classified documents routinely and casually. He shared them with people who had no authorization to see them. He treated national security information as if the rules didn't apply to him. This kind of corroboration from an insider witness makes the prosecution's case much stronger. It's not just investigators saying Trump mishandled documents, it's Trump's own chief of staff confirming it. Fourth key point, the immunity deal signals prosecutors believe Meadows is telling the truth. Federal prosecutors don't give immunity lightly. They only do it when they believe the testimony is so valuable that it's worth protecting the witness from prosecution. The fact that Jack Smith's team gave Meadows immunity tells you they believe his testimony is credible and important. They've evaluated what he has to say, they've assessed his reliability as a witness, and they've concluded that protecting him is worth it because of what he can provide. That kind of prosecutorial confidence in a witness matters when cases go to trial. Fifth key point. Meadows' flip represents a crack in Trump's inner circle that could encourage others. When the chief of staff cooperates with prosecutors, it sends a message to everyone else. It says that cooperation is possible, that the wall of silence isn't impenetrable, that people can flip and survive. Other witnesses who might have been hesitant, worried about retaliation or social consequences, might now see Meadows as an example. If the chief of staff can talk, anyone can talk. And prosecutors love momentum. Once one major witness flips, others often follow. Meadows might be the first domino in a chain reaction that brings down the whole structure of silence and denial. Sixth key point. The testimony undermines every defense Trump has offered. For years, Trump has been claiming he didn't order anyone to overturn the election. Meadows says he did. Trump has been claiming he acted quickly once he understood January 6th was getting violent. Meadows says he watched for hours without acting. Trump has been claiming the classified documents were handled properly. Meadows says they were shown to unauthorized people. Every defense, every excuse, every explanation Trump has offered is directly contradicted by sworn testimony from his own chief of staff. That's an incredibly difficult position for any defendant. When your own people are testifying against you, when the insider account contradicts everything you've said, your credibility is destroyed. Seventh key point. The political fallout extends to the 2026 midterms and beyond. Every Republican candidate is going to have to answer questions about Meadows' testimony. Do they believe the chief of staff? Or do they believe Trump? Do they think Trump ordered election overturn efforts, or don't they? Do they think Trump refused to stop the January 6th violence, or don't they? These are no-win questions. Siding with Meadows alienates Trump's base. Siding with Trump means denying sworn testimony from someone who was in the room. The smart political play might be to avoid the topic entirely, but that's getting harder as the evidence accumulates and the testimony becomes more damning. So where does this all end? What's the trajectory from here? Meadows' testimony is going to be central to whatever legal proceedings move forward. It's going to be cited in court filings. It's going to be quoted in trial presentations. It's going to be the foundation for charges and convictions. Prosecutors now have the chief of staff's sworn account of what Trump ordered and what Trump knew. That's the kind of insider testimony that makes cases, that persuades juries, that establishes guilt beyond reasonable doubt. The legal firestorm Meadows has ignited isn't going to burn out quickly. Every new detail that emerges, every new aspect of his testimony that becomes public, adds fuel. The January 6th investigators have his account. The classified documents prosecutors have his account. State investigators in Georgia and elsewhere have his account. All of these threads are now connected by Meadows' testimony. All of them are strengthened by his cooperation, and all of them are moving toward conclusions that are increasingly dangerous for Trump. Trump's options for responding to this are limited. He can attack Meadows, call him a liar and a traitor, but that's a hard sell when Meadows was the chief of staff and is testifying under oath with immunity. He can claim the testimony is politically motivated, but Meadows is a Republican who served loyally for years. He can try to distract with other stories, but the Meadows testimony keeps breaking through. There's no easy spin. There's no simple explanation. The chief of staff is telling prosecutors and the public that Trump did exactly what he's been accused of doing, and that testimony isn't going away. The fractures this creates in Trump's political coalition are significant. Some supporters will stick with Trump no matter what, dismissing Meadows as another deep state traitor, but others, particularly those who aren't fully committed to Trump personally, will find the testimony troubling. When your own chief of staff testifies against you under oath, that's not something you can easily wave away. That's not something you can dismiss as fake news. That's someone who was there, who saw everything, who has every reason to know the truth, saying publicly that Trump crossed lines that should never have been crossed. Keep watching this story. Keep paying attention to what Meadows has testified and what comes next, because this is the moment when insider testimony finally provides the evidence investigators have been seeking: the orders to overturn the election, the refusal to stop the January 6th violence, the casual mishandling of classified documents. All of it is now on the record, sworn to under oath by the person who was closest to Trump during the most critical moments. This is what accountability looks like when it finally arrives. Not sudden or dramatic, but relentless. Witness by witness, testimony by testimony, revelation by revelation, until the truth is impossible to deny and the evidence is impossible to explain away. Meadows has provided that evidence. He's told prosecutors everything, and the legal firestorm his testimony has ignited is going to burn through Trump's defenses and potentially through his presidency. The consequences are coming. Maybe not today, maybe not this month, but they're coming, and Meadows' testimony is a major reason why. I'll see you in the next one.